It's really irritating to see them go after Mikey. Mikey didn't do anything ever to Van Halen.
When Michael Anthony suddenly stepped away from Van Halen, the rock world didn't just react. It erupted. Fans, critics, and insiders all scrambled for answers. Was this the end of a brotherhood that once seemed unbreakable? Had tensions finally boiled over behind the scenes? No one had clear answers, but one thing was undeniable. Something significant had shifted, and everyone could feel it. What made the mystery even more intriguing was Michael's silence. He didn't lash out. He didn't fuel the rumors. Instead, he carried himself with quiet dignity, continuing to perform with new bands and connect with fans across the world.
Mikey was the most loyal guy in the band. He was the first guy there at rehearsal, the last guy to leave, the guy that was first guy at the gig.
While speculation swirled, he remained respectful toward his former bandmates, including the legendary Eddie Van Halen. To many, it seemed like the split was simply a natural evolution, a seasoned musician choosing a new path while honoring the past. For years, fans held on to that belief. They followed both sides loyally, watching Van Halen continue their legacy while also supporting Michael's new musical ventures. It felt like a peaceful separation, a rare example of rock stars parting ways without bitterness. But time has a way of revealing truths, and now at 70 years old, Michael Anthony has finally decided to speak more openly. And what he's beginning to share is reshaping how fans view one of rock's most iconic stories.
No, unfortunately, Eddie and I never had a chance to really, settle any differences that we had in the past or whatever.
Long before sold-out arenas and global fame, Michael's journey began in an unexpected place, with a trumpet. It wasn't rock and roll that first captured his imagination, but something far more traditional. That changed at age 13, when he felt the undeniable pull of electric music. Instead of following the crowd, he made a bold and unconventional decision. While his friends gravitated toward guitar and drums, Michael chose the bass. As he once said, "I wanted to stand out. Everyone else was doing the obvious. I wanted something different." That decision would alter the course of his life forever. It led him straight into the orbit of two ambitious brothers already making waves in Pasadena, Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen.
Carried the banner, the flag, the VH banner. He carried it every night, and the horseman with the flagman on the horse in the cavalry. That was Michael Anthony, okay?
At the time, they were performing under the name Mammoth, building a reputation with their electrifying energy and raw talent. Small venues, school dances, backyard gigs, wherever they played, they left an impression. Then came a moment that felt almost destined. Both Michael's band and Mammoth were scheduled to perform at the same high school event. Just before Mammoth was set to take the stage, disaster struck. Their PA system failed. For most bands, that would have been the end of the night. But Michael stepped in without hesitation, offering his band's equipment. It was a simple gesture, but one rooted in genuine kindness. As he later recalled, it just felt like the right thing to do. That single act didn't just save a performance. It planted the seed for something much bigger.
For Eddie to say he had to show him what to play and had to teach him all those songs, that is the biggest line of bullshit I've ever heard in my life.
When Mammoth's bassist Mark Stone eventually left, the Van Halen brothers remembered the musician who had helped them in a moment of need, and who also happened to have a powerful voice and solid groove. They reached out to Michael, inviting him to jam. From the very first session, something clicked. It wasn't forced or rehearsed. It was natural, almost effortless. It felt like we'd been playing together for years, Michael would later say. And just like that, a lineup was born that would go on to redefine rock music. With David Lee Roth bringing unmatched charisma, Eddie revolutionizing the guitar, Alex driving the rhythm with relentless power, and Michael anchoring it all with his steady bass and signature harmonies, Van Halen became more than a band. They became a phenomenon, Those early days were filled with something rare, pure, unfiltered passion. Before the fame, before the egos, before the fractures, there was just music. And when they stepped onto stages like the legendary Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles, the energy was undeniable.
We sat and talked, and there was a lot of closure for me there. Valerie was there. So it was a great night, you know.
It was 1977, and even without a record deal, Van Halen already felt unstoppable, a rising force ready to take over the world. Then fate stepped in, and everything changed in an instant. One night, legendary producer Ted Templeman found himself in the crowd at a Van Halen show. What he witnessed wasn't just another band grinding through a set. It was raw electricity. The energy, the chemistry, the sheer unpredictability of it all left him stunned. He didn't hesitate. Almost immediately, he moved to sign them to Warner Brothers Records, setting the stage for a journey that would become one of rock's most iconic success stories. When their debut album Van Halen dropped in February 1978, it didn't quietly arrive. It exploded. The sound was fresh, aggressive, and impossible to ignore. At the heart of it all was Michael Anthony, whose deep, driving bass lines and unmistakable high harmonies added a powerful layer beneath the chaos. Tracks like Runnin' with the Devil and Ain't Talkin' 'Bout Love didn't just showcase flashy guitar work, they revealed a tight, balanced machine where every piece mattered. As former manager Noel Monk once pointed out, while Eddie Van Halen rightfully drew attention for his revolutionary playing, it was Michael's steady foundation that allowed everything else to soar. His bass and backing vocals weren't just supporting elements, they were essential. Without that grounding force, the band's sound wouldn't have carried the same weight or cohesion. The numbers proved it.
I was in that band for 11 years. There was never a video camera involved of Eddie showing him what to play.
The album went on to sell over 10 million copies in the United States alone, launching Van Halen into the highest ranks of rock music almost overnight. Suddenly, they weren't just the hottest band in Los Angeles. They were a global force. Venues grew bigger, crowds louder, and expectations higher with every performance. For Michael, it felt like living inside a dream he had once barely dared to imagine. Looking back, his memories of that era carry a sense of warmth and a hint of longing. "We were like brothers," he would later say, his voice touched with nostalgia. "Everything we did together. Traveling, writing, performing. It felt like nothing could ever break that bond." And for a while, it didn't. The success only continued to build. Albums like Van Halen 2, Women and Children First, Fair Warning, Diver Down, and the monumental 1984 kept them firmly at the top. Songs like Jump dominated airwaves and television, while their music videos became staples on MTV. It seemed like Van Halen had become untouchable, the very definition of rock stardom.
If Mike would have played any more than one note, it would have been showing that Eddie wasn't playing the right chords again and again and again. I couldn't sing to him, you couldn't play bass to him.
But behind the roaring crowds and flashing lights, something far less glamorous was beginning to take shape. Success, as it often does, brought pressure, and with it came cracks in the foundation. Creative differences began to surface. Personalities clashed. The very ambition that had fueled their rise started pulling them in different directions. The bond that once felt unbreakable began to strain under the weight of expectation. From the outside, the golden era still gleamed. Fans saw the hits, the energy, the spectacle. But behind closed doors, the atmosphere was shifting. Tension quietly replaced trust. Conversations grew heavier. And while no one could yet see the full storm forming, the signs were there. Subtle at first, but impossible to ignore. Then came the moment that would change everything. It was 1984, and Van Halen was at the absolute peak of their power. The 1984 album had turned them into global superstars, with massive hits like Jump, Panama and Hot for Teacher dominating charts worldwide. On the surface, it looked like they had reached the summit of rock success. But beneath that success, something far more complicated was unfolding, something that would deeply affect Michael Anthony's place within the band. What was supposed to be just another electrifying night on tour quickly took a different turn. Backstage, away from the noise of the crowd, the atmosphere felt different. He was pulled aside, not casually, but deliberately. Waiting for him were Alex Van Halen and David Lee Roth, along with the weight of something unspoken. According to Noel Monk's revealing account in Runnin' with the Devil, what happened next felt less like a discussion and more like an ambush. Just hours before they were set to perform, Michael was presented with documents, papers he hadn't expected, in a moment he couldn't have prepared for. The documents placed in front of Michael Anthony that night weren't just routine paperwork, they were life-altering contracts. Hidden within those pages was a devastating reality. Michael would be stripped of future songwriting credits and see his ownership stake in Van Halen drastically reduced. Even more shocking, the terms reached backward in time. The deal was retroactive, meaning he would lose royalties from the massively successful 1984, the very album he had helped bring to life with his playing and vocals. In that tense backstage moment, the pressure was overwhelming. There was no time to think, no room to negotiate. Just hours before showtime, with fans already filling the venue, Michael was forced into a corner. "I had a choice," he later admitted, the weight of that memory still evident in his voice. "Sign away my rights, or risk shutting everything down."
So that is a lot of bullshit, and I don't know why they go after him like that. He doesn't deserve it. He's one of the greatest rock and roll bass players ever in the world. Michael Anthony is top 5 rock and roll bass player in the world.
What was I supposed to do? Walk away and disappoint thousands of people who came to see us play? Former manager Noel Monk would later say that, had he been present, he would have advised Michael to refuse outright. But in that moment, standing face to face with Alex Van Halen and David Lee Roth, the situation didn't feel like a negotiation. It felt final. The decision had already been made, and all that remained was his signature. So he signed. "It felt like I was being told I wasn't an equal anymore," Michael would later confess. "Like everything we built together, suddenly didn't belong to me the same way." The financial consequences were staggering. Millions in potential royalties erased in a single moment. But for Michael, the deeper wound wasn't about money. It was about trust. "You know what hurt the most?" he once said, his voice breaking slightly. "It was realizing that maybe I was never truly seen as an equal. After everything we'd been through, the gigs, the tours, the years, I was still replaceable in their eyes." That realization cut deeper than any contract ever could. That night became a turning point, not just for Michael, but for the entire band. The bond that had once defined Van Halen, forged through years of struggle and shared success, began to unravel. What had started as a brotherhood built on passion and loyalty was now strained by control, pressure, and unspoken resentment. And yet, despite everything, Michael chose silence. He didn't go public with accusations. He didn't lash out in interviews or stir controversy. Instead, he did what he had always done. He showed up, played his part, and gave everything he had to the music. "I kept it to myself," he later admitted, "because at the end of the day, the music and the fans meant more to me than anything else. I didn't want to ruin that." But silence comes at a cost. Inside, the damage had already taken hold. The trust that once held the band together had been fractured, perhaps permanently. Every performance after that carried an unspoken tension, a sense that something vital had been lost. And while the crowd still cheered and the shows still delivered, the foundation beneath it all was no longer the same. The seeds planted in that backstage moment didn't disappear. They grew. And soon, they would lead to even bigger changes. Not long after, in 1985, another shockwave hit the band. David Lee Roth was out. The flamboyant frontman who had helped define Van Halen's identity suddenly stepped away, leaving fans stunned and uncertain about the future. For many, it felt like the end of an era, the closing chapter of the band they had come to love. But Eddie Van Halen and Alex weren't ready to let the story end there. Instead, they made a bold move. Enter Sammy Hagar, the Red Rocker. With his powerful voice, commanding stage presence, and a different kind of charisma, Hagar brought a new energy into the band. The transition wasn't just a lineup change, it was a transformation. Fans quickly gave this new era a name, Van Hagar. With Sammy Hagar stepping in as frontman, Van Halen didn't just survive, they soared. The band entered a powerful new era, releasing 4 consecutive #1 albums, 5150, OU812 for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge and Balance. Each release proved that the band could evolve without losing their identity. At the center of this evolution was the vocal chemistry between Hagar and Michael Anthony. Michael's soaring, melodic harmonies blended seamlessly with Sammy's gritty, powerful voice, creating a fuller, more layered sound. Together, they gave Van Halen a new emotional depth, one that resonated strongly with fans and kept the band firmly planted at the top of the rock world. From the outside, it looked like everything was perfect. Hit records, sold-out tours, and a renewed sense of purpose. But behind the scenes, the cracks that had formed years earlier never truly disappeared. The fallout from the 1984 contract still lingered in quiet ways, in conversations left unsaid, in trust that never fully returned. Success masked the tension, but it couldn't erase it. As the years went on, that tension only grew heavier. Studio sessions became more strained. Creative differences turned into arguments. The pressure to constantly outdo their past success pushed everyone to the edge. By 1996, the situation reached a breaking point. The Hagar era ended not with celebration, but with conflict, creative disagreements and personal clashes tearing the band apart once again. By then, Van Halen had developed a reputation not just for groundbreaking music, but for instability. Lineup changes became almost as talked about as their albums, and the sense of unity that once defined them felt increasingly distant. Perhaps the most painful shift happened between Michael and Eddie Van Halen. What had once been a relationship built on mutual respect and shared passion began to unravel in public. Eddie's tone toward Michael changed, slowly at first, then unmistakably. In interviews, he began downplaying Michael's contributions, even going so far as to claim he had to teach him every note he played. For Michael, those words cut deep, not just because of what they implied, but because they came from someone he had once considered a brother. Fans who had long admired his steady presence in the band suddenly began to question his role. Yet even in the face of that, Michael refused to retaliate. He chose restraint over reaction, letting his decades of work speak for itself. Still, the internal dynamics of the band continued to shift. On Van Halen 3, Michael's involvement was noticeably reduced. He played bass on only a handful of tracks. By the time Best of Both Worlds was released in 2004, his role had diminished even further, with Eddie Van Halen handling bass duties while Michael contributed primarily backing vocals. The brotherhood that once felt effortless had now become distant and fragmented. Communication grew minimal. The easy, creative connection they once shared was replaced with formality, when they spoke at all. And yet, through all of it, Michael remained steady. He didn't criticize, didn't escalate, didn't break his silence. His loyalty to the music and the fans never wavered. Then came 2006, a moment that would define everything. There was no meeting, no phone call, no conversation, just a headline. One ordinary day, while browsing online, Michael came across shocking news. He was no longer part of Van Halen. After more than 3 decades of dedication, he had been replaced. Not in person, not with respect, but through the internet. I found out the same way everyone else did, he later revealed. I read about it online. After everything we'd been through, I didn't even get a call. The person stepping into his place was Wolfgang Van Halen, Eddie's teenage son. And despite everything, Michael didn't respond with anger. He understood. On a human level, he could see why a father would want to share the stage with his son. There was no bitterness toward Wolfgang himself, but the way it happened, the silence, the lack of respect, that was what truly hurt. I get it, Michael said with quiet honesty. Eddie wanted to play with his son. I respect that. But after 30 years, to not even tell me directly, that's when it really hit me how far apart we'd grown. And in that moment, the last thread of that once unbreakable brotherhood finally snapped. That moment, discovering his fate not through a conversation, but through a headline, marked the final collapse of communication between Michael Anthony and the Van Halen camp. After decades of loyalty, years of tension and wounds that never truly healed, it all ended in silence. No closure, no acknowledgement, just absence. That moment changed everything for me, Michael later admitted. It wasn't just about losing the band. It felt like losing a family I thought I'd have forever. The reaction from fans was immediate and intense. Across the world, longtime supporters voiced their frustration and disbelief. Online forums lit up with anger, confusion, and heartbreak. At live shows, fans held up signs in support of Michael, reminding everyone that his presence hadn't been forgotten. For many, he wasn't just the bassist. He was a vital part of the band's identity. From his unmistakable backing vocals to his iconic Jack Daniels-themed bass, Michael had become one of the most recognizable elements of Van Halen's image. His energy on stage, that ever-present smile, and the chemistry he shared with Eddie Van Halen helped define an era. Together, their instruments, Eddie's striped guitar and Michael's bold bass, became symbols of a golden age in rock. And yet, even after everything, Michael chose restraint. He didn't go on the attack. He didn't fuel controversy or speak out in anger. Instead, he carried himself with the same quiet professionalism that had defined his entire career. He shifted his focus forward, pouring his energy into new collaborations and projects, continuing to do what he loved most, playing music. But beneath that calm exterior, the emotional weight remained. Privately, he was processing something much deeper than a career change. He was grieving the loss of something that had shaped his life for over 30 years. The trust, the camaraderie, the shared history, all of it felt shattered. And alongside that grief, there was anger. Not loud, explosive anger, but something more personal. I was angry, he later admitted, not just because I was replaced, but because it felt like none of what I gave mattered in the end. No conversation, no thanks, just gone. For someone who had been there from the very beginning, who had stood on stage night after night and helped build the band's legacy, the way it ended left a lasting mark. It wasn't just the decision, it was how it was handled. And yet, even in that pain, something unexpected began to take shape. For the first time in decades, Michael was forced to step back and ask himself a question he had never truly faced. Who was he outside of Van Halen? For over 30 years, the band had been everything: his identity, his purpose, his home. Now, standing at that crossroads, he had to rediscover himself not as a member of something iconic, but as an individual artist once again. It wasn't an easy transition. There were moments of doubt, moments where the loss felt overwhelming. But there was also something else, something he hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. Slowly, through new collaborations and genuine friendships, Michael began to reconnect with the pure joy that had first drawn him to music as a teenager. No expectations, no pressure, just the love of playing. Still, even as he moved forward, one chapter remained unfinished. Because somewhere in the back of his mind, there lingered the possibility of reconciliation, a chance, however small, that the bond he once shared with Eddie might be repaired. It was scary, Michael Anthony admitted honestly. When you've been part of something for so long, you start to wonder if you even exist outside of it. For the first time in decades, he wasn't standing on a stage as part of Van Halen. There were no tours lined up, no familiar routines, no sense of certainty, just questions. Questions about identity, purpose, and whether he could rebuild something meaningful after losing what had defined most of his life. But sometimes, when everything feels uncertain, the right call comes at exactly the right moment. Out of nowhere, the phone rang, and on the other end was Sammy Hagar, the unmistakable voice of the Red Rocker. Not long after the news of Michael's departure spread, Sammy reached out with something simple yet powerful. "Hey, Mike," he said, "you want to make music that's actually fun again?" Michael laughed when he recalled that moment. Just like that, everything clicked. It reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. The spark between them reignited instantly. Soon after, the two hit the road together under the name The Other Half, a playful, knowing nod to their shared history as part of the Van Hagar era. Their shows weren't just concerts, they were celebrations. They performed classic Van Halen songs alongside Sammy's solo hits, delivering a mix of nostalgia and fresh energy that fans instantly connected with. The first time we got back on stage together, Michael said, it felt like no time had passed. The chemistry was still there. The vocals, the groove, the friendship. It honestly felt like coming home. That reunion didn't just bring back memories, it reignited something deeper. Before long, that renewed energy evolved into something even bigger. Alongside legendary guitarist Joe Satriani and powerhouse drummer Chad Smith of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Michael and Sammy formed a new supergroup, Chickenfoot. This wasn't just another side project. For Michael, it was a turning point. Chickenfoot was healing, he revealed. It reminded me that I still had something to offer, that my playing, my voice, my presence still mattered. When their self-titled debut album dropped, it made an immediate impact, landing in the Billboard Top 10. Critics praised the band's explosive chemistry, highlighting the balance between raw power and tight musicianship. And once again, Michael's contribution stood out. His bass lines driving the rhythm, his harmonies adding depth and texture. But beyond the success, what mattered most was how it felt. For the first time in years, there was no tension, no pressure, no sense of walking on eggshells. Nobody was questioning what I brought to the table, Michael said. There was respect, real respect. We were equals, creating something together. That sense of freedom was something he hadn't experienced in a long time, and it changed everything. And the momentum didn't stop there. Michael soon reunited once again with Sammy, this time as part of Sammy, Hagar, and The Circle, a group built not just to perform, but to celebrate the legacy of rock music itself. Joining them was Jason Bonham, the son of the legendary John Bonham, bringing with him a powerful connection to rock history. The Circle became something special. It wasn't just about new music. It was about honoring the past while embracing the present. Their set lists spanned decades, blending Van Halen classics, Sammy's solo hits, and even tributes to Led Zeppelin in honor of Jason's roots. And for fans, there was something deeply satisfying about seeing Michael back where he belonged, on stage, smiling, fully immersed in the music. Night after night, audiences erupted as those familiar bass lines filled the air once again, The sound was unmistakable, the energy was real, and the connection between Michael and the crowd felt stronger than ever. Despite everything that had happened, Michael Anthony never turned against his former bandmates publicly. He stayed quiet, respectful, and professional, allowing fans to believe that Van Halen had simply gone their separate ways. To the outside world, it looked like a peaceful split, and Michael let that narrative stand, out of respect for Eddie Van Halen, Alex Van Halen, and the legacy they had built together. Finding himself on stage again with Sammy Hagar and the Circle reignited something inside him. The joy he once felt in the early days came rushing back. Surrounded by genuine friends and a supportive environment, the bitterness of the past slowly gave way to something better. Working with Sammy, Joe, Chad, and Jason reminded me of something important, Michael reflected. Sometimes when one door closes, it's because something better is waiting. They didn't just give me a place to play, they gave me back my confidence. Even as his happiness returned, one question followed him everywhere. Would he ever reconcile with Eddie? Fans never stopped asking. And for a long time, Michael avoided giving a real answer. The truth was complicated. Deep down, the hurt hadn't faded. Back then, he admitted, I didn't think I could ever forgive him. It just cut too deep. Then everything changed. On October 6th, 2020, the music world lost one of its greatest innovators. Eddie Van Halen passed away after a long battle with cancer at the age of 65. The news hit Michael hard. In an instant, the years of tension, the contracts, the misunderstandings, all of it faded into the background. What remained were the memories, the early days, the laughter, the music they created together before anything got complicated. When I heard Eddie was gone, Michael said quietly, none of that other stuff mattered anymore. I just thought about the guy I met when we were kids, this unbelievable talent who changed music forever. In the days that followed, Michael paid tribute in the most sincere way he could. He shared old photos, moments frozen in time from when everything was still simple. His message wasn't about conflict. It was about gratitude, respect, and saying goodbye to someone who had once been like a brother. What he didn't share right away, though, was the part that hurt the most. They never made peace. The pain didn't stop there for Michael Anthony. It deepened when he realized he wouldn't be part of Eddie Van Halen's private memorial. He understood, truly understood, that the family needed privacy. Grief is personal, and no one has the right to intrude on it. But understanding something doesn't make it hurt less. After decades of shared history, being absent from that final goodbye left a quiet, aching void. He was such a big part of my life, Michael said, his voice breaking. We grew up together. We built something together that changed everything. And in the end, I had to say goodbye from a distance. That's hard to accept. In the weeks that followed, Michael found himself drifting through memories. Not just the big, legendary moments, but the small ones. Late-night rehearsals in cramped garages. The first sparks of something special before anyone else noticed. The thrill of walking onto massive stages as fans roared. And in between it all, the quieter moments. Sitting on tour buses, laughing, arguing, dreaming about what could come next. Those memories didn't fade. If anything, they became louder. The anger he once carried was gone. The frustration had softened. What remained was something more complicated, a bittersweet sense of peace mixed with the weight of what was left unresolved. Eddie's passing forced Michael to face a truth he had spent years avoiding. Not everything gets closure, he said quietly. Some stories just stop. Some things don't get fixed. You don't always get to say what you wish you could have said. You just have to accept it, even if it's not the ending you wanted. And yet, even in that unfinished ending, life had one more unexpected moment waiting for him. That moment came through Wolfgang Van Halen, Eddie's son. Months after Eddie's passing, Wolfgang reached out with something simple yet deeply meaningful, an invitation. He asked Michael to come to a mammoth WVH show at the House of Blues, Las Vegas. Nearly 20 years had passed since they had truly connected. Still, when Michael saw that message, he didn't hesitate. Something about it felt important, like a door quietly opening after years of silence. When he arrived at the venue, he didn't know what to expect. There was a chance it could feel awkward, even painful. But what happened instead became one of the most meaningful experiences of his life. Backstage, he came face to face with Wolfgang and with Valerie Bertinelli, Eddie's former wife. What could have been tense turned into something genuine. There were no walls, no hostility, just people brought together by shared history and loss. Wolfgang and I really talked, Michael said, emotion filling his voice. About everything. Music, memories, his dad. There wasn't any anger there, just understanding. And then, in a moment that seemed to hold years of unspoken feelings, Michael said something that stayed with everyone in the room. I told him he's a piece of my heart, and he always will be. That conversation wasn't about revisiting old wounds or trying to rewrite the past. It was about something deeper: connection, legacy, and healing. As Michael watched Wolfgang perform that night, he couldn't help but see echoes of Eddie, not just in the music, but in the passion, the focus, the quiet intensity. It wasn't imitation. It was something more personal, a continuation. And in that moment, something inside Michael shifted. It wasn't closure in the traditional sense. Eddie Van Halen was gone, and the past couldn't be rewritten. But for Michael Anthony, something just as powerful took its place: peace. Watching Wolfgang Van Halen on that stage, Michael said softly, it felt like Eddie was still there somehow. Like the music we created all those years ago was still alive, just carried forward in a new way. The grief didn't disappear, but it transformed. Through Wolfgang, Michael found a bridge back to everything he thought he had lost: the music, the connection, and even a piece of that brotherhood that once defined Van Halen. That night became a quiet turning point, not because it erased the past, but because it allowed Michael to finally set it down. It gave me something I didn't even know I needed, he admitted. Wolf could have held on to old feelings, but instead he chose connection. And in that choice, something shifted. The weight Michael had carried for years, the hurt, the silence, the unanswered questions, finally began to lift. He didn't forget the past, but he no longer felt trapped by it. Today, at 70, Michael is still doing what he loves. Performing with Sammy Hagar and the Circle, he steps onto the stage night after night, his iconic bass in hand, pouring his heart into every note. And in those moments, the music becomes more than just sound. It becomes a connection. Every time I play those songs, he said, it feels like I'm still talking to Eddie, like the bond we had never really left. Maybe that's the real ending to this story. Not a perfect resolution, not a final conversation, but something deeper, a reminder that music can outlive conflict, that connection can survive distance, and that even the most complicated relationships can leave behind something meaningful. What do you think? Did Michael's story change how you see Van Halen and their legacy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around for more powerful deep dives into rock history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.